Tomorrow, we're 1 month away from leaving. I know you're feeling the pressure. You could have collapsed, pouted. You could have said, we're not good enough. But you gotta keep going.
We're all starting at the very, very tip of this ginormous iceberg.
We the People boils down to a mock congressional hearing.
No matter how this competition goes down, they will put their best foot forward.
We're winners, I guess. That feels weird to say because I have not won anything.
You gotta be well informed if you want any impact on anything.
My students are ready.
You guys want to drum roll me?
There's a variety of different ideologies in my group.
In life.
Yeah, true.
We are so politically divided. It's not your beliefs anymore, it's what side are you on.
We've got serious issues. We need serious people to tackle those issues.
This has been my little project. It's like my version of wearing my heart on my sleeve, but I'm from West Virginia. So all of my gay rights pens go off during school.
We're very opinionated.
No more debate.
No. It's not making the other person change their mind, but making sure they understand where you're coming from.
We don't sit down and talk. We don't actually listen to each other.
They are starting to figure out who they are. I want to empower my kids to keep questioning.
If you don't see it as I want my team to win and more how can we collectively make this country a better place, it can be something very positive.
Democracy.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's special webinar and screening event, Empowering a Nation of Student Civic Leaders, hosted by Maryland Public Television and the Maryland Center for Media Literacy and Education in partnership with the Maryland Civic Education Coalition. We are thrilled to have you with us as we kick off Civic Learning Week 2025. Tonight, we'll explore how civic learning strengthens democracy and why engaging young people in these conversations is more important than ever. I am Carla Thompson, Director of Pre-K-12 Learning Design here at MPT, and I'll be guiding you through the first few minutes of our program tonight before we dive into the documentary clips and our expert panel discussion. Before we get started, just a few quick housekeeping items. Our chat room is open. We encourage you to use it and to share your thoughts and reflections throughout the event. Please keep your comments respectful and relevant to our discussion. If you have questions for our panelists, please enter them in the chat room. We'll do our best to get to as many as possible in the Q&A session around 8 p.m. And if you experience any technical issues, try refreshing your browser first. If you need additional help, our team is here to assist you in the chat. So tonight, we'll watch selected clips from PBS Retro Report's Citizen Nation, which follows students competing in We the People, a premier civics competition. We'll see how high schoolers from across the country, representing diverse backgrounds and perspectives, grapple with critical questions about democracy. After the screening, we'll engage with an incredible panel of Maryland-based experts, including both youth and adult voices, to discuss the connection between civic learning and democratic engagement, how educators, students, and communities can amplify civic education, as well as the action steps we can all take to strengthen democracy through civic learning. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator for tonight's discussion, Eve Case. Eve is the Elementary Coordinator of Science and Social Studies with Anne Arundel County Public Schools, and she also serves as the Education Work Group Lead for the Maryland Civic Education Coalition. Eve is a passionate advocate for civic learning, and she will guide us through this important conversation tonight. Please join me in welcoming Eve Case.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us for this important conversation on civic learning and civic participation. Before I introduce our dynamic panel, I just want to take a moment and share with you a little bit of information about the Maryland Civic Education Coalition. Our coalition is committed to ensuring that all Maryland students have access to meaningful, hands-on, comprehensive civic education, and service learning opportunities. We invite all who live and work in Maryland to join us. Please visit our website and join in on our initiatives. You can see that our website was dropped in the chat for you to visit. As you may know, the Center for Civic Education's We the People, the Citizen and the Constitution is a comprehensive civic education program focused on the history and principles of constitutional democracy, where students present arguments before judges in a simulated congressional hearing. So we are honored this evening to have an outstanding group of panelists with us today. Let me introduce them, and then you'll hear from them throughout our program. We are exceptionally honored to have Congressman Jamie Raskin joining us this evening as he steps off the floor and gets onto our webinar to speak with us. A former constitutional law professor and longtime champion of civic education, Congressman Raskin has dedicated his career to defending democracy, the Constitution, and the rule of law. He currently represents Maryland's 8th Congressional District in the U.S. House of Representatives and serves on key committees focused on oversight and democracy. We are also joined this evening by Dr. Marcy Taylor Toma, a national leader in civic education. Marcy has dedicated her career to strengthening social studies and civic engagement across Maryland. As a former Maryland State Department of Education specialist and a key advocate for high-quality civic learning, she's played a vital role in advancing civic readiness initiatives statewide. We are also joined by Jessica Murphy, a dedicated educator at Reservoir High School in Howard County, Maryland. Jessica teaches government and works to empower students with civic knowledge and skills. Here with us from Christopher Newport University, we have Jillian Zimmerman. Jillian participated in the national We the People competition with Boonesboro High School back here in Maryland and returned as a coach during her senior year. She is currently interning in the Virginia House of Delegates. And also joining us this evening is Roxy Adeleke Wales, a senior at Bowie High School in Prince George's County, Maryland. Roxy competed in We the People and has since taken on a leadership role in the MICFA Challenge Student Voice Program, the Maryland General Assembly PAGE Program, and the Washington Area Bicyclist Association. We are absolutely thrilled to have such a knowledgeable and passionate group with us tonight. Let's dive into our conversation. So in just a moment, we are going to see a few clips. But before we do that, we're going to start with a couple questions. Dr. Toma, I'd like to start with you. How does participation in the We the People competition enhance students' understanding of constitutional principles?
Well, thank you very much for that question, Eve. It forever changes students' understanding of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And because they have to take such a deep dive into the constitutional principles and apply those to the current events, these are lessons that the students never forget. The competition is at the local, state, and national level. And so the teams, the unit teams, get opportunities to keep practicing their opportunities to talk about the constitutional principles and apply them to current events. But beyond the constitutional knowledge, the competition helps students develop these critical thinking skills, public speaking skills, research and argumentation skills, and really empowers their opportunities to have thoughtful conversations with people they agree and don't agree with. So it really helps them have this deep-rooted understanding of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and it really changes the students forever. And we have lots of research that demonstrates that. So we're thrilled to have this opportunity to talk to everyone about it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Toma. Before we get into our first clip, I'd love now to hear from a current teacher, Miss Murphy. Can you share with us, what can you tell us about how the students in your classes have responded to participating in these mock congressional hearings?
Hi, thanks. So this is my second year doing simulated congressional hearings with my students. And both last year and this year, my students absolutely loved participating in mock congressional hearings. I was a part of the James Madison Legacy Project cohort of 2023, funded by a U.S. Department of Education grant. We trained on the We the People curriculum from the Center for Civic Ed during a week in Annapolis, led by Marcy. After learning about the program, I realized it would be the perfect, authentic mid-year assessment for my 10th grade American government students that they would take as a final exam instead of a traditional standardized assessment. I had them all do Unit 1 since historically that's been an area that my students have really struggled to connect to, and it's heavily assessed on both the MCAP and the AP exam. This method of implementation was a big hit with my students. For my AP students, I used past year's national and state level competition questions from Unit 1. They were able to incorporate the ideas of the founders, cite Brutus I, the Federalist Papers, and discuss ideas of classical republicanism at a very deep level. They were able to then take those same ideas that previously they'd been struggling to connect to and do exactly that. Link them with contemporary court cases, current events, and key pieces of legislation. We the People gave us the framework, and JMLP helped me with the lessons to support them in putting those ideas into practice. It's been absolutely a joy to watch them shine. I was nervous about taking a whole month of my curriculum in this way, but the students really did end up going above and beyond. They scored beyond the historic average for our school and above our school and county average on the AP exam, which was a 93% of passing the exam countywide. Doing this sort of in-depth scholarship not only helped prepare them for deep research and defending their positions, but also doing really well on the AP exam. And the students really saw that and bought in.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that, Ms. Murphy. And I think the passion that Ms. Murphy describes in that, in her description of her AP students and her students taking U.S. government will come out in the clips that we're going to see this evening from Citizen Nation. So we are going to transition into our first clip this evening called Citizenship Responsibilities. And one of the things that I want you to consider as you view this clip is the idea that this series is special. It's not just focusing and highlighting on the civic learning that happens within the confines of a simulated congressional hearing, because that's not real life. We know that these students are watching the world around them, seeing what's happening in their schools and outside of their schools, and also in their families. So as you watch this clip, kind of keep in mind all of the components that go into the responsibilities of citizenship, the demands of a campaign, and kind of coming of age in this democracy.
Boy. Calm down.
One of the other states we're watching closely is Virginia, where the legislative races.
In Virginia, November. In Senate District 16, Democrat Skyler von Valkenburg closely scrutinized across the country for hints of what might come in next year's 2024 presidential cycle.
Hope you don't mind. I'm solving parts of your crossword. All of the easy ones are gone. Little Wonder. Steve? Oh, Stevie Wonder. What's the plan today?
Precincts all day, and then see you hopefully at the victory party tonight.
Yes, I will be
with
there.
Your sisters.
Mm-hmm.
So how about yourself?
Vote and bring the sisters to the party. That's basically my whole day.
All right, voting, first time voting.
Yes.
How you feeling about it? You're voting for me, right?
I haven't decided yet. Today is obviously the election day, but it's also my 18th birthday, which is cool. My birthday's on election day every 6 years. I was born on election day, turned 6 on election day, turned 12 on election day, 18, and presumably in the future, 24, 30, and all of those other birthdays that follow. I'm relieved that it's almost over.
Do you know who to vote for all the local races?
Not all of the candidates, no, not off the top of my head.
You better check that before you go vote.
Okay. Duly noted.
Okay.
I will look it up. Good morning. You know, I am 18. I am now legally an adult, which means I have to handle a lot of things now that I didn't have to deal with before. I get to vote for once. But it's a mixture of like excitement from like getting to vote and also just kind of slight disappointment that my dad's not there for it, but expectation, it happens.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day.
How's it going, sir? Skylar Van Valkenburg would love to earn your vote for state senate. Hey, love to earn your vote. Skylar.
Democrat.
Yep.
You got it.
How have the doors been? We've spent the last year knocking on thousands upon thousands of doors and spending a lot of money on advertising. But at the end of the day, it's not in your hands, right? It's in the voters' hands.
Every race is tied. I've never seen races like this. Everything is tied.
Yeah, so
we have no idea what's going to happen.
Yep, I am very nervous for my dad. I mean, it's stressful that he might not win, but we'll see.
So we do have some information that is coming in.
In Senate District 16, Democrat Skylar Van Valkenburg is the projected winner over Republican.
Sure, it means I don't get to celebrate as much my birthday on the actual day, but I don't blame him for having the election take priority, because that's a thing that's much bigger in the grand scheme of things.
Anybody that's in public service knows that you can't do it without your family. I don't think they've seen me for a weekend in like a year. Yeah. And so I get to have a weekend with them this weekend, and we get to celebrate victory.
All right, well, thank you for observing that first clip. And before I engage our students in a question, I do want to formally welcome Congressman Jamie Raskin. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We're so excited to get your take on some of these clips coming up. And so
I'm delighted to be with everybody, and thank you so much for everything you're doing.
Thank you. So as we watch that clip, I'd like to direct this question to Jillian and Roxy. We know that engaging in elections is an important way to participate in our democratic republic. However, we know that it's not the only way. And I even saw a comment in the chat from a 7th grader wondering how to get involved. What does civic responsibility mean to you, and how do you exercise it in your daily life? And has kind of this We the People experience been part of that for you?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Roxy Adeleke Wales, and I am a senior at Bowie High School here in Prince George's County, Maryland. And yes, I totally agree. Although voting in elections is the method that most people prefer and is pushed the most, there are other ways for us to be engaged civically within our democratic republic. For me personally, my civic responsibility and how I exercise it in my daily life is by not just paying attention to statewide or nationwide politics, but our local politics. I've made it a mission to attend all of my county's Board of Education meetings, county council meetings, and our city level meetings, because those, in my opinion, are the bodies of government that affect us the most. You know, another thing is protesting on behalf of a cause that you care about, or volunteering for different nonprofit organizations. And most importantly, and what the We the People experience has prepared me with the most, is staying informed. Of course, you can't go to a Board of Education meeting and not necessarily know what it's about, or volunteer for a nonprofit or a cause without knowing what it's about. But understanding our Constitution and the level of governments and the social and political issues around us is what helps us stay informed.
Thank you, Roxy. Jillian, do you want to add on to that?
Yes, I totally agree with Roxy. And hi, everyone. I'm Jillian. I'm from Washington County. And I honestly think that civic responsibility is so much bigger than just governments. It goes all the way down to like your home life. And for me, being a college student on the college campus, I have civic responsibilities on my campus where I actually volunteer for the school. So I help in the administration office to help get students to come to school. So if anyone's looking to college, Christopher Newport, but it's really about how you can contribute and act responsibly in your community. And I think it all starts at home. Like for me, how I got so, I guess, interested in everything civics is with my family. I had a lot of discussions with my parents growing up. Both my parents are on different sides of the coin. So I learned quickly how to be able to listen to both sides and really take all that information in. And we're able to have those open discussions in my home where if something doesn't sound right, we're allowed to talk to each other about that and just really make sure that we know how our feelings are. And it also teaches us how to engage democratically and to be able to learn how to have conversations with one another, because I think that's a huge part of civic responsibility, is to be able to be a citizen and to act responsibly.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jillian and Roxy, for those meaningful pieces of advice and information. And I know there are both educators and young people on this call who can take something away from your experiences. We're going to transition to our next clip, which is really going to get into some nuances regarding the judicial branch. So I'd love for you to focus on, that information regarding the judiciary, but also this clip is going to give you a glimpse into how these simulated congressional hearings work and the types of pressure and the preparation that our student teams from across the nation, which includes Roxy and Jillian with their We the People teams, what they need to do to be ready to compete, what kind of knowledge and information they need to have and their connections to current events. So pay attention to both the content, the government content, and also the experience of the students participating.
Please have a seat, everybody. We're delighted to be here with Southwest Career Technical Academy. Could you focus for me a little bit on what protects the independence of the judiciary under our Constitution?
It is scary going first because you're like, oh my gosh, you're just scrambling to get an answer out. The judicial branch is seen as a nonpartisan, independent arm of government, although that sometimes is slightly disregarded.
The landmark court case, Marbury v. Madison, established the judiciary plays a large branch. The judiciary branch plays a large role in all future cases.
We are all working towards the same goal, and we literally share our points. Somebody else's failure is our failure as well, and somebody else's success is our success.
It's just a matter of not even who tried the hardest, but how do the judges perceive it? How do the judges receive it?
Are we ready? Do you think that law enforcement should be given certain latitude with respect to Fourth Amendment issues?
During this week, there was a mass shooting at UNLV, and I feel like government officials, like police, they should have a bit more power for the safety of their students and of the community overall.
Having my dad at the competition was a lot of pressure because I really want to show him everything I know. But you really never know what kinds of questions the judges are going to ask.
Let me ask you this. Has the power of judicial review gone too far and been too unrestrained?
The power of judicial review has gone too far. We have reached a point in our country where Supreme Court justices' interpretations of the Constitution tend to align with their political ideology. This is completely contradictory to the original intention of the framers under the Constitution.
Do you believe that the president should be able to pardon himself and or his family members as part of that power?
Absolutely not. Well, while there is no explicitly stated wording in the Constitution, this definitely undermines the original intentions of the founders when creating that presidential power. This would definitely undermine the rule of law and decrease the trust of voters in our country.
Lots of meaty content in that one. I'm going to direct the first question here to Congressman Raskin. As we've seen, an important aim of the We the People program is to foster an understanding of constitutional principles. Why is this understanding crucial for active and informed citizenship in today's society?
Well, because we live in a nation that is suffering from profound constitutional and civic illiteracy. We've got a president who issued an executive order purporting to destroy birthright citizenship in America. The very first sentence of the 14th Amendment says all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. So 5 different judges, a Reagan judge, a Bush judge, a Trump judge, an Obama judge, a Biden judge, all struck it down. One of them said that it was the easiest case he ever had to decide. And you don't have to be a lawyer, you just have to know how to read in order to understand what's wrong with that. But these kinds of episodes of total constitutional derangement are taking place on a daily basis. I mean, we got the Vice President of the United States saying that the president basically gets to decide what the law is within the executive branch, which cuts directly against the Supreme Court decision that young man was talking about in the last little clip there, Marbury versus Madison, 1803, which is all about the power of judicial review and how the Supreme Court can order an executive branch official, in that case, James Madison, who wasn't then the president, he was the Secretary of State, to deliver judgeship papers, a judicial commission to William Marbury, who had been appointed and confirmed as a judge, even though the president of the United States was telling Madison not to do it, even though Jefferson was saying, no, well, I don't want to do it. But the Supreme Court clearly has the power to order executive branch officials to comply with the law. But I mean, I deal with this all the time in Congress. I had a colleague who got up on the floor who said the moral downfall of America was in 1962 in Engel versus Vitale, when the Supreme Court banned prayer in the public schools. And I got up, I explained, well, first of all, the Supreme Court never banned prayer in the public schools. As long as there are pop math quizzes, there will be prayer in the public schools. Anybody can pray whenever he or she wants to pray. It's just the government cannot compose a religious script and compel your children to participate in it. We have an establishment clause in the Constitution. And if you studied your constitutional history, you would understand this was the ingenious breakthrough of the American Revolution, that we broke from centuries of religious warfare between the Catholics and the Protestants in Europe, every bit as vicious as the wars between the Sunni and the Shia today, and holy crusades and inquisitions and witchcraft trials and all that stuff. We wanted to place government on a principle of reason, and everybody could practice and worship exactly as they wanted, or not practice and not worship if they wanted, but that government would be the realm of reason, science, empiricism. And now we've got this terrible assault on reason and science and basic constitutional principles taking place now. So we need everybody to acquire the means of intellectual self-defense against those who would demolish our basic constitutional principles.
Thank you so much, Congressman Raskin. That was not only a great history lesson for us, but a reminder of many of the current events that we can each walk down the hallway of a classroom right now and hear them talking about it, whether it's in a U.S. history class or a U.S. government course. So it really just, I think, magnifies the importance of the work that we're doing both in the schoolhouse and with programs like We the People. Dr. Toma, do you want to add on how the Center for Civic Education and the We the People program is preparing students to both understand but also apply constitutional principles beyond, memorization?
Oh, yes. Thank you for that question, Eve. Well, the Center for Civic Education has been preparing students and teachers to learn about the Constitution, the principles of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights for actually 60 years now. And we realize how important it was during the bicentennial when so many of our teachers really did not have the content knowledge or or the skills to really teach about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So it became so important that it actually became important enough to Congress for them to fund the Center for Civic Education, so we could then provide professional learning opportunities to high school, elementary, and middle school teachers and students. And part of this is not just teaching them about the principles of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, but being able to apply those understandings in meaningful ways. So then they can have these debates and these discussions, not just to their, although having conversations with your family is very important and with fellow schoolmates, but to be able to really demonstrate your understanding through a simulated congressional hearing in a panel, to a panel of judges. And it continues to deepen their understanding and give them the I'll say, really enriches their understanding of the Constitution and the principles and how to be able to apply it to just exactly unfortunately, the arguments that we're having about the Constitution or the lack of the constitutional knowledge in Congress right now. So students today, I wish I could go back and teach my former students and be in a classroom today, because I'm sure that Ms. Murphy can tell us about the rich experiences and the discussions that she's having about what's going on in our political world today.
Thank you so much. Congressman Raskin, do you have any final words that you'd like to share with us, regarding, you're on the floor of Congress dealing with this every day, but we're out in the schoolhouse, we're out as students interacting, we're working for organizations. What can we continue to do to help to bring more knowledge and understanding to the world?
Well, it seems to me that we need to be inculcating a sense of constitutional patriotism in our students. That is, a sense of loyalty and fidelity to the constitutional values and principles that govern everybody. And it's great for young people to be involved in partisan politics and policy and cause advocacy. All of that's great. But then I think we have to explain to them it's critical for everybody to support the constitutional structure itself within which we all operate when we're political party actors. And, we're in a situation where constitutional government is under attack all over the world by authoritarianism. And constitutionalism implies the rule of law. And what's the rule of law? It's the idea that the law applies to everybody. The law always applied to people who didn't have any power and people who didn't have any money. But the rule of law is the radical idea that the law must apply to everyone, including people in public office, rulers, and people who have a lot of wealth. And that idea is under attack with this march of authoritarianism all over the world, with autocrats and theocrats and plutocrats and kleptocrats, people who would like to use government for their own purposes. So I do think that we need to promote a love of our Constitution and the struggles that people have had to open it up. It wasn't like we started out as a perfect country or anything. Abraham Lincoln talked of government of the people, by the people, and for the people. That wasn't the way we started. We were a slave republic of white male property owners over the age of 21. But through successive movements of struggle towards a more perfect union, we've changed America. We've transformed America to the point where we are the world's greatest multiracial, multi-ethnic, multicultural constitutional democracy. And yet we're under attack from all over the world, from all of these different forces, which are saying that democracy is defunct, constitutions no longer work, that whole system's obsolete. We're moving into a monarchical techno state. We just need a dictator who will take everybody's data and information and then turn it into a 21st century monarchy. So we need to defend the democracy we've got and then make sure that democracy is constantly evolving and updating so we can deal with all of these new threats to our kind of government and the values that we have, which really go back to the Declaration of Independence, the consent of the governed, all people being created equal, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for everybody. And it's those values that the movements of our history have always tried to hold us to. And I think it's clear to people now we're an exceptional country, but we're not exceptional because somehow we're immune to the possibility of authoritarianism or fascism. We're an exceptional country because the people have always struggled to make democracy meaningful and to incorporate everybody who lives in the society. And that really is the American dream, and that's the more perfect union we're striving for. And forgive me, because I think I've got to go, Eve, but I'm very grateful to you for inviting me to drop in for a moment.
Thank you. And thank you so much for those powerful words. We are so honored that you could join us this evening, and please continue your energy and your zeal and your zest and keep fighting the good fight.
Thank you, everyone. Hang tight and keep up the great work. All best.
So with those very profound words, we're going to move into our next clip here, looking at how the media shaped the narrative of civil rights and disobedience. What a perfect segue as we talk about forming a more perfect union. And with this clip, I'd love for you to pay attention again to the heavy, really important content of the clip and of the congressional hearings and what's being discussed, but also think about the idea of representation and just how important it is through the vignette of this clip.
This year, there was many times where I thought about dropping the class. And I remember we had to like sell bake sale stuff to like get money. And like this black girl was there and she was like, thank you for doing this, because like you make me want to do this. And like I am about to cry, but like I just really think that like I'm glad I stayed, because like me doing this will help encourage other people like to do it.
What role does the media play in shaping the narrative concerning civil disobedience?
The media plays a crucial role in determining the narrative for this. In the civil rights movement, the Children's March on Birmingham was televised, and this showed the chaos that the police were inciting on the protesters and caused JFK to start the initiative to pass the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Being one of two black people in the class, it's just like crazy.
A law which we eventually decide is a bad law.
A protester must be willing to accept the consequences of their actions, because I feel like Tulsa West is a very diverse school, but like in programs like this and sadly AP programs, like I don't know why there's just a lack of representation.
That was amazing. That was awesome. That was phenomenal. It was all the compliments that you heard them say. The man.
Because like, it's flipping insane. Like actually, like it's insane.
I got nothing to say. You guys absolutely crushed it. Well done, everybody. Absolutely crushed it. You're not crying. You're crying.
Good job. But like you said, y'all know all these amendments in this Constitution. Y'all have to use this. You have to. This is beyond a semester of school.
And like that really is my motivation, especially to get into politics, because like really like I want to make a difference, and like I really like this cannot be America. Like we gotta lock in and like seriously have a difference in our world.
Thank you. Such a powerful clip. I'd love to open it up by, addressing Roxy and Jillian for many different reasons on many different levels. Sometimes I think it takes a lot of courage to participate in the We the People program. Do either of you or both of you want to kind of speak to that and maybe what that means to you?
Yeah, I can speak to this. Gosh, I've been a part of the We the People program for what feels like a long time now. I started as a student in Unit 5, Then, as a junior, my senior year, I was a coach for the program. And this past year, I came back as a district judge for the program. And I just remember when I started getting so nervous to talk in front of judges because it felt like these people knew so much and I was so young and I still had so much to learn. But sitting on the other side now as having the experience of being a judge, honestly, I learned things from the students that were sitting in front of me. And I think the experience as a whole is just so well rounded because you're expressing knowledge to these people who already have knowledge. And it's just a big building of all of this knowledge that everybody has and has learned throughout their time in the program. And there are things that I learned from We the People that I will carry with me forever. Public speaking being one of them. I was not fond of it, but now I'll speak to whoever. But you also learn so many different things about the Constitution and principles. And I remember the very first time I ever competed, it was districts my junior year. They gave us a question that none of the people in my unit knew the answer to. And I will carry that with me forever. Because I was in the Supreme Court unit, it was something about the Masterpiece Cake Shop Supreme Court case. I'm not going to go into the details about the court case, but I will carry the facts of that case with me, even though I didn't need to know it at that point. But because I was in that moment and I didn't know, I have done so much research about that court case and I will carry that with me forever. So I just think it's funny the things that you pick up other than the skills that you learn long term from the organization.
Thank you, Jillian. Roxy, do you have anything to add on to that kind of, or to supply from, your own experiences around courage and participation?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I feel like for me, it was a really nerve-wracking experience. I first attended in my junior year, and I participated in training the attendees this year during my senior year. And it was really nerve-wracking based off of the fact that it was the first year that my school had ever done it. So we were new to the space, and obviously we're going up against more seasoned people. And also on top of that, it wasn't a class for us, rather we spent the time during our extracurricular clubs to review the curriculum and therefore plan from there forth. So it automatically felt as if we were at a disadvantage and we didn't have a shot at winning. And it's not about winning, it's about learning. It's like what she said, it's about learning, it's about gaining the speaking skills and being able to talk in front of a crowd and understanding just the basic concepts of how our country works.
Thank you so much, Roxy. So before we wrap up this, before we move into our next clip, I just want to reach out to Ms. Murphy to kind of ask about going back to the content topic from the clip. How do you think that media coverage influences public perception and action within social movements? And is that something you talk about with your students, both in your U.S. government and AP courses or in preparation for competition?
So that is something that we talk about a lot. We talk about civic participation and all of the legal methods of civic participation. One of the first things that we really talk about is basically we never blindly share information, because how do we know that it's true? And I think that's something that a lot of times we say to students, but all of us would do well to remember that. It's so easy to just click that share button. And it's so hard to dig in and do the research and do the sourcing. And my students have gotten really, really good at this. And they love to come and brag to me and share to me, Ms. Murphy, did you see this? Like, how did people not know that that is not true? And look at this and see, and debunking information that is false, and then finding what is true. And Jillian's example was perfect about sometimes you get a question in the moment, even as teachers, where we're like, I don't actually know. Let's go research. And being vulnerable like that is something that really is wonderful and has the potential to really help all of us grow and learn. So for this, being deliberate and doing the sourcing is really important. Our young people do a truly fantastic job of taking that fact-checked information and making it something that can really spread and bring more people to their cause. The big thing that we always talk about keeping in mind is staying focused. What's our goal? If you're saying that this is the information that matters to you, what's your goal? What do you want to do with that? My students and I always talk about making sure that the right people are getting the right message. What do you want people to do? Who's the decision maker in this situation? Are you sending the information to someone who can actually do something with this? Who do you need the support of? When do you need their support? Because that's going to actually matter just as much. Youth don't need a ton of money or the ability to have transportation or the ability even to vote, to have agency. It's a matter of collectively harnessing energy and the power of youth to make positive change on an issue that matters. And social media can be a tool to make that happen when it's used safely, appropriately, and responsibly.
Wow, thank you so much, Ms. Murphy. I want to get that list from you that you just shared. That was awesome. And I think it kind of addresses something that came up in the chat around how do our younger students who aren't of voting age yet, how do they show agency? And one of the ways is through that media literacy. And as you enter the world of social media, maybe that's in middle school, maybe that's in high school, you really think about the power that you have and the knowledge that you could bring to that platform for your peers. So that was an awesome example. Thank you to everyone who shared in this last segment. Well, we've got one more clip to share with you this evening, and it's called How to Respectfully Disagree. And with this one, again, I think that the content, it's going to be spicy, it's going to be interesting in terms of what they're discussing, but also consider the interactions between the teammates who don't always agree with one another. And as we think about what We the People develops beyond the ability to present before judges, we develop this opportunity for civil discourse and what that looks like between people that might agree, but also might disagree. So pay attention to both of those layers as you're watching this clip.
Efforts to ban books in the U.S. are on track to break a record, and Florida is among the states that top the list.
Florida has become the epicenter of the war over what books should be allowed in schools after a law was passed in 2022.
South Florida public schools are moving and removing certain books that some parents find objectionable.
Each of the books up for review have to do with LGBTQ and racial issues.
The vagueness of these laws is forcing our schools to practice censorship.
At a time when the debate is no longer civil.
How long has that book been on the shelf? When was it ordered?
You all
How many times?
Do not
interrupt me.
You all reviewed this book and said that it was educational.
We asked a group of high schoolers in Miami to show us a different way to confront the issue.
I think that we should leave our education systems to those who have large amounts of experience within the educational field, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what one parent might believe or what another parent might believe. What should be done within the best interest of the child is what's going to help them grow.
Instead of having politicians and lawmakers deciding this, we should have a lot of more teacher input, because again, these are the trained professionals who studied and who are with the students in the classroom every day.
I would like to disagree with what you guys have said. I do agree with the fact that yes, teachers are trained professionals and ultimately know the best way to teach a child. However, some teachers, unfortunately, bring their biases to the classroom. So yes, I do believe that we should not ignore teachers. However, I think putting the responsibility solely on them and ignoring the parent is a danger, because at the end of the day, the parent knows their child best, and I think they should have greater input as to how their child should be educated. I think it would be better than having one teacher who might be biased affect 20 to 30 kids at a time.
Subjects like religion or sexuality, they should be not necessarily restricted, but they should be more encouraged by the school system to be done at home rather than in the captive audience that is the classroom.
All right. So thinking about what you just saw and what what those two layers were. Like we said, the rich content, and then the also the conversation and the nuances of agreement and disagreement. I'm going to start. Actually, I'm gonna throw this out to the whole group, and maybe Dr. Toma can start us off. What do you think are some of the most effective techniques that you've noticed in working with your James Madison Legacy Project group or working with your own students or a classroom in terms of facilitating this productive dialogue that goes across different viewpoints?
Well, I think it's important to start your constitutional arguments or your current event discussions rooted in a source. Now we know tempers get heated over these discussions, like the book banning. That's really a hot topic, and it's part of Unit 6 in the We the People curriculum. But I think that one practice that I have used both at all levels, even at the college level, is to have kids debate a topic from a perspective that they don't normally share, and for them to have to really look at another perspective by looking for sourcing the information from a variety of places, and then defending it from a perspective or political perspective or political place that they normally would not consider. And I think that is a good practice. I also think one of the problems that we're having in America today, unfortunately, is that we're not listening to one another. Everyone seems to be, it almost feels as though we live in a reality TV show every day. And unfortunately, our news is not helping with that. I think that we all need to just take time and listen to one another before, interrupting or disagreeing. So I think those practices are important in the classroom, but I think they're just important in every day. I've tried it myself lately. I'm talking to everyone and listening more than talking. And I think that's hard for me because a lifelong educator, you feel like you always want to share your opinions or your ideas, or you might know more, but I think it's important to listen to each other.
Thank you so much. Does anyone else want to comment on that? And the idea of, this might be something that's very much part of the learning in a classroom. And as we use different strategies as teachers, or we help students, to root their constitutional arguments for the congressional hearings a certain way and to interact with judges a certain way. But once we leave that sort of controlled space or environment, this was Miss Murphy or Roxy or Jillian, have you seen a carryover from sort of what you learn in that controlled environment to the way that maybe your peers interact outside of that environment, or Miss Murphy, the way your students interact? Is there anything that we can share about that?
I can definitely take that one. One of the things that we really need to keep in mind is this does not go well if there's not a foundation of mutual respect. You have to establish respect amongst classmates. A lot of times we learn that school means you have to respect the teacher and only the teacher, and that's not going to work in a scenario like this. The students need to respect one another's viewpoints. The teacher needs to respect the students and the students' viewpoints. It's got to be a two-way street for everyone in that room, or this does not go well. So there's an awful lot of foundational work that really needs to be done early in the school year before even getting to the sorts of things that Dr. Taylor Toma was just talking about, that initial beginning of the year stuff. I always create a classroom constitution, and it creates a groundwork for us all to work in. We develop norms together. We develop classroom values together. And then we do lots of little kind of goofy things to get to know each other and to build the classroom as an academic space where we can take risks, where we can support one another and we can build on one another instead of tearing each other down. And once we do that, we can do the sorts of things where we do deliberation and students are assigned a viewpoint and assigned resources in compliance with, and I'm in Howard County, so we have the Howard County Controversial and Sensitive Issues policy. So for our controversial issues, we're going to give equal time to both sides, but sensitive issues, that's going to be different. So sensitive issues are going to be something where there's a reliable historical fact, where there's one side that is correct, whereas a controversy is something we're in debate for. And so for those controversies, we're going to initially do exactly like what Dr. Taylor Toma was talking about, with getting assigned a viewpoint, getting assigned some sources, and then digging into that sourcing. How do we know that this source is accurate? Going from there and building from there. And then we eventually get to the point where we can do our own research, we can evaluate our own research, and we can do the wonderful We the People program. And this is something that we can do regardless of age. I want to give a shout out to all the elementary educators in Howard County. They're amazing. Every single 5th grade teacher in Howard County does We the People with their students. It was piloted in 2003, and now every single school does it, and it's really cool. And that's one of the wonderful things about We the People, is it can be scaled for different age groups, and lots of different ways to implement. But you had asked about like a specific thing. How do we know that they can take these sorts of things outside of the classroom and really know that all the lessons that they're learning in here are really going to be something that stick with them? And I'd like to share with you something a parent told me. She, in a parent conference, said that she at home was calling voters of a particular party an unflattering name, we'll say. And her son stepped in and mentioned that several of his friends in class that he worked with in his group for the simulated congressional hearing had different viewpoints than he did. And that as they worked through the assignment, they had really worked through those differences and talked through them. Both of them have evidence-based reasons for why they feel the way they do and the views that they had. But they were both respectful of one another, and they both listened to each other, and they're still good friends. And it was really important to him that his mother understood that. To her and to me, that's exactly what we're trying to do here, and that's why civics is so important.
Thank you so much. That was a really powerful story to end with there, and an application of what's coming out of this, beyond building our next set of leaders. So thank you. Before we transition, I've got a really big important question for Roxy and Jillian, but I do just want to promote a lot of really great resources that can help you to do all of the things that that Ms. Murphy and Dr. Taylor Toma were sharing. And so in the chat, we've got the Center for Civic Education curriculum links. We've got information from PBS Learning and MPT around resources that Retro Report has curated and developed with Citizen Nation. We have another great partner in the Maryland Civic Education Coalition called Street Law that produces incredible materials for civic discourse and civic action and civil discourse. So just know that you're supported, classroom teachers and students, as you embark on this work and perhaps set the foundations for a We the People program. So right away in the chat, there was a question that popped up, and it really has, I think, resonated with me throughout this experience. And then hopefully we can hear from Roxy and Jillian about how it resonates with you. So in the chat, someone mentioned that, as a high schooler right now, a lot of students are feeling very pessimistic. They're making, dark remarks about America's future and maybe feeling a sense of apathy or hopelessness around their involvement. And so with this question, I guess, and I'll start with Roxy, like, how do you convince your peers that, leaning in and getting involved and conducting the action of the service learning, like, that's the way we're going to make a change and it is worth it? What would you share with the student in the chat or with, your fellow students?
Yeah. I've definitely encountered that attitude from a lot of my friends, and it's really understandable. Like, when things take a dark turn, people's minds tend to take a dark turn with them too. But there's two things that I myself emphasize to myself whenever I feel like, oh, things are hopelessness or things are hopeless, or my friends say that. It's like, one, which is also kind of dark, is that things could always be worse. Like, sure, things are bad now, but the more inactivity we have, the less passion we have, the less people we have protesting, educating themselves, the worse our situation's going to get. Another thing that I personally look back to when I think that, oh, like, there's not much we can do, is looking at the people that came before me, the civil rights activists that came before me, that if they gave me the rights to even have an education now, I should have the willingness to stand up and fight for those rights to stay preserved.
Thank you, Roxy. Jillian, do you want to share as well?
Yeah, I think that it's really important for us to encourage our peers to be just civically educated, because I don't think that younger generations really realize how much of an impact they ultimately have, especially in this day and age where technology is so it's so used consistently that it doesn't matter how old you are, as long as you know what you're talking about, you can educate people all over the world. We have the opportunities and the access to reach people globally. So I think it's very important that kids stay involved, because just because you're young and you're unable to vote, I know it's frustrating. We've all been there. We really want to make a change. And even though we can't make that change necessarily firsthand yet, you can still make a change secondhand by sharing information that you know is right, and making sure that there's a space for opinions to be fostered safely, and just to participate in open discussion. And I think it's really important that we encourage younger generations to be educated, because they are ultimately the ones that are going to grow up and they're going to be making the decisions for the country. So I think it's really important that we emphasize that even though right now they're not making the decisions, they will be the ones making the decisions. So I think it's really important that they understand that concept.
Thank you so much. So let me summarize a few key points and see if there are any final words from our panelists, or any final questions that are put into the chat from our group this evening. So as Congressman Raskin really articulated, democracy is fragile. And we are in a place right now where we are seeing our leaders, seeing us as we the people defending that democracy. And that work for democracy doesn't just start when you turn 18. And that we see organizations and opportunities through things like We the People, where students find their agency and they are able to participate in that application of democracy, that deep understanding of constitutional principles. And so we want to expand that opportunity, and through great teachers like Miss Murphy and engaged students like Roxy and Jillian and tireless, fierce advocates like Dr. Toma, we try to expand access to programs like We the People, because we know that our democracy depends on it, and that what Congressman Raskin said that's really going to stick with me, I might make a sticker for my car, is this idea of we need constitutional patriotism. We need a deep understanding of the Constitution, not just a surface level reference to what that living document is, so that we can defend it and it can evolve. Would anyone on the panel like to share any final words as I check the chat to see if there are any last questions?
I'm just going to echo something that yes, Congressman Jamie Raskin mentioned, but also your comments, Eve. It is this civic values and civic dispositions that is so important to our American democracy. And it's our civic duty, I believe, for us to be more aware of what's going around, even though sometimes we want to hide in a shell sometimes, because what's going on around us right now doesn't feel as though it's politically healthy, or even in some ways emotionally healthy. But I think we have to embrace the importance of I like the way he said it, that our civic participation, our civic empathy, I would even say, but values and disposition is part of our civic world, is part of our civic understandings. And I think through programs in safe and respectable places like Miss Murphy's classroom and Mr. Duba's classroom, where Roxy goes to school, I think these kinds of discussions lead to more civic participation and civic commitment to who we are as all the people of our great nation in America. And I believe that George Washington understood the importance of his civic duty as our first president. And I really honor some of the precedents that he set as the executive of the first executive of our nation. And I just have hope for our nation. And I get greater hope when I see my We the People kids at the 5th grade or the middle school or the high school level. I smile and I think, wow, these kids are amazing. And I wish everyone could embrace the kinds of feelings and commitment that they have to understanding our political world as they do.
Thank you so much, Dr. Toma. Any other final words before we switch over to the Maryland Public Television to close us out this evening?
I had asked my students, I had told them that I was going to do this, and I told them I was nervous. And they said, good. They said, you made us do simulated congressional hearings, and we were so nervous. And you know what, Miss Murphy? We did amazing, and you're going to do amazing. Our students are so awesome and so powerful. And if we give them opportunities like this, the sky's the limit.
Absolutely. And if you're in the audience right now and you're wondering, what is this We the People program all about? What does the curriculum look like from the Center for Civic Education? Please check out the chat and click on the link, and you'll see just how in-depth the program goes around not only the historical perspectives, but really the development and then the application of the 3 branches of government in great detail, both, as Marcy stated at the beginning, at the local, state, and federal level. Well, I think that kind of wraps us up for this evening. I'm going to turn it back over to Ms. Thompson. Panel members, thank you so much. You were amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And thank you. As we wrap up this very important conversation, I want to thank our audience also for joining tonight. Your engagement and your questions in the chat show just how vital civic education is to the health of our democracy. And a huge thank you to our incredible panelists for sharing your insights and your experiences this evening, and to our moderator, Eve Case, for leading such a thoughtful discussion. And of course, Maryland Public Television and the Maryland Center for Media Literacy and Education greatly appreciates our collaboration and our partnership with the Maryland Civic Education Coalition for making tonight possible. Our conversation doesn't end here. Civic learning isn't just something that happens in the classroom. It's something that we all can champion in our schools, in our communities, and our everyday lives. Whether it's encouraging youth civic engagement, supporting educational initiatives, or simply continuing these conversations with those around us, each of us has a very important role to play. So if you are looking for more ways to get involved, we encourage you to visit the Maryland Civic Education Coalition website for additional resources and action steps. If you're looking for ready-to-use, standards-aligned classroom resources, we invite you to visit MPT's education portal, thinkport.org, and you can also find all of these Citizen Nation clips that were shown tonight, plus more, related support materials on PBS Learning Media. Again, all of those resources are free to use for the classroom. We know that media literacy and civic learning are deeply connected, as the ability to analyze information empowers individuals to make informed decisions and engage in civil discourse like we saw tonight. So we invite you to take time to visit our recently launched resource hub for the Maryland Center for Media Literacy and Education and learn how you can engage with us. Once again, thank you so much for being a part of this event and for your commitment to civic education. I hope you have a really wonderful evening, and let's continue working together to empower the next generation of engaged citizens.